America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and there's a certain quality of risk that's required to do any meaningful work. For example, to even do this show, I have to risk saying things that people might not want to hear, and then they won't give money, and then I don't have to. They won't watch the show, and then I have to shut down. But I risk because I believe what I'm doing for the people. And you might not agree, and I have to risk that quality of embarrassment. Anytime you ask out a girl, it's a risk. Risking is important. Like, I asked out my wife at work while I was working on the clock. Could have been fired, but no. Instead, I have like a wife and 3 kids. Like, risk is important to be in America. If you have a market society, you need people to risk to produce things that they don't know will get bought because you can't make people buy them, right? You need to put yourself out there in order to do meaningful work and do memorable work, both in romantic life, in religious life. Just ask Martin Luther. Or in political life, this is how the risk to keep other people from taking our borders. We need to risk our lives in order to sustain the American way of life. In market society, you need to risk to produce and put all of your time and energy into a good that people might not like. And then you might not eat. So there's a quality of risk that's required to live a meaningful and free life, especially in America. And maybe not especially in America, but I think especially in America. And, I've done other shows about how this quality of risk is gendered, and we have a gender division of risk in society, and we have a gender division of labor in society. And we have a lot of talk about the gender division of labor, but we don't really talk about the gender division of risk. And since we're not fixed by nature, and all of this stuff is like, none of it's really stable. Like, we need to sustain a culture of risk in order to even keep the quality of life that we have today currently. Forget increase to the future, and have a better quality of life. We need to cultivate a stomach for risk in both intimate lives and market-based civil lives, or in political lives. Progressive, you can't be a progressive if you're scared to risk. And not only that, you need a culture that's okay to risk if you're really serious about being progressive, because you're telling people to try something that's never been done before. You don't have a track record if you're trying something new, right? And so we need a culture that supports risk if we're going to move forward as a people. And so I'm pro-risk. Now, I'm anti-gambling, right? And I think both Adam Smith and Hegel have sufficiently good arguments about this. I go with Hegel's argument because I think I'm a little bit more familiar with it, because I do a lot more work on Hegel. Smith talks about how unproductive laborers, including schoolmen like myself, are a little bit dubious because we don't make things for the market. But I think Hegel has it a little bit better, right? So Hegel understands gamblers and speculators, stock speculators, as being a kind of rich rabble. They make money without producing anything. They gamble even if they win. If they win, they make a lot of money, but they still have disdain for the system that they just gamble on without actually producing for. And if they lose money, they have disdain for the system. So it's just like a culture of gambling ends up being a culture of disdain for market society, for the good parts of market society. Now, there's going to be arguments that investing is important, and there's going to be a difference between investing and gambling. Maybe not from the point of view of the gambler, but from the point of view for the gambler's soul and character, but from the point of view of society, there is. Because, in an advanced society, you need to raise capital somehow in order to get your thing off the ground, right? So people they gamble on your project. They think it's going to make them money, but they think it's going to make them money because it's good. Other people will gamble because they think it's going to make them money because they think it's going to make them money. And that's the problem. They're not worried about if it's good. They're worried about if it's going to make money. And that's the bad kind of gambling rather than investing, right? So we need to carve out a space where investing is allowable, although a little bit dubious. We don't want just a country of investors. It's a little bit dubious, but is allowable. But gambling is something that's, if not verboten, a little it should be stigmatized, right? So Kalshi is this prediction market that wants to pretty much set up a way to gamble on every difference of opinion. Do you think Danny Glover is going to die in 2026? Do you think your Little League is going to win? Your Little League baseball team is going to win this game and not that game, right? Kalshi is really trying, using AI and advanced algorithms, to set up markets for all of like any difference of opinion. That's their goal. So you'll have people win and lose their livelihoods based on something that's not productive. And that's not great for society. That ends up turning people down. You know, I think it might be possible. It might be possible if you guarantee people a job, so no matter how much they lose, they can always go back to work. But it's too tempting to have such a great swing in like your fortune, where you could either win or lose generational wealth based on something that's fully, like, completely not productive. Like, you don't want winners. Forget you don't want people losing their shirt. You don't want people winning that way either, in a way that's completely not productive for society, and not even towards investing towards producing something that's productive for society, but just because you're gambling on society while outside of it, parasitic upon it. It's all just a tool. You're not a member of society, you're a parasite, right? So that kind of gambling's bad. And this is the idea that you should be able to gamble on every difference of opinion, And we see what it's done with the NBA and parlays and people then just changing outcomes and having their entire life around not producing some good or service for the market, but trying to figure out a way to cheat a gaming system. And that's their whole life. And that's not a life we should support. So I'm going to look at the comments right now, and says Prof looking like D Wade with the cut. Well, it's it's funny because, like I said, I used to have a thing for Gabrielle Union, but you shouldn't divorce money and making moves and movement in society with being productive for society. I try to be productive for society by helping you not screw up your lives and giving you better arguments for things that you might have intuitions for but don't have a concrete conceptual determination. I try to give you the concept that'll help strengthen your arguments, but we need risk in society because risk allows us to be free in our intimate life, in our market life, and in our political life. Like political progress, all of this depends on risk. You don't have a civil rights movement without risk. We need a culture of risk, and a culture that respects risk in a productive way. But gambling is a kind of a collateral, is an externality of a culture that appreciates risk, because the gambling isn't even aimed towards producing anything productive in society. It's aimed towards making money off of other people being productive in society. And that's a fundamental difference, and we should not encourage it. We need to encourage a culture of risk without encouraging a culture of superfluous gambling, and be able to make the hard distinction about, are you betting on society or are you betting on the ability to produce something for society? Because if you're betting on the ability to produce something for society, well, okay, here's a seed loan for your business, right? And that's the bank betting on you. Now, if you're betting on, if you're just betting on the operation of society and a difference of opinion concerning the operation of society that won't produce anything for society, good or ill, it just might make you rich or might make you poor, that is superfluous. That is superfluous and not something that I think we should support as a culture. So production market without a good that's not tied to a good is not particularly great. I don't know, prove me wrong in the comments, but I tried to make a distinction between the culture of risk that we need for a market society, for a society where people like choose love and a society where political progress can happen, and a society we can go to the moon for, and like why we need a culture of risk and why the gender division of risk isn't particularly great. I think women need to take on more risk in the same way that like a lot of women think that men need to take on more dishes. But I think it's very important that we actually address the gender division of risk in both the intimate, the market, and intimate relations, the market, and in politics. Because I want more progressive movements led by women, especially on the Democratic Party. Since they're going to lead stuff in the Democratic Party, I need them to actually be able to take risks and not just be wet blankets. But that can't be gambling, which is abstracted from the operation and the production of goods and services, and is wagering on the operation, like the production of goods and services, without actually contributing to like the production of goods and services, right? So, or you might be parasitic upon that in a way that like constrains the just flow of goods and services, or corrupts the just flow of goods and services, and that's not great either, right? So I hope there's a distinction between productive risk making and risk taking in all aspects of life, and just gambling on other people's productive risk making and risk taking, which isn't the same. And then there's that marginal case of investing where I don't know. Thank you. All right. So, yes, blah, blah says, Amy, on your broadcast about organized Jewry and Pan-Africanism, you spoke on the spiritual identity that's instilled to give Jews an identity. My critique is that blacks have a spiritual identity. No, we have an external identity. We have an identity that we're thrown into and can be interpreted by right, by phenotype, any which way, but doesn't have to actually be worked out. It's not a spiritual identity. There is no black Haggadah. There is no black Haggadah. There is no justified, like it's neither Catholic nor like richly tribal Jew. No, it's an externally imposed situation. Now, we all come to similar answers because it's externally imposed like in a pretty regular way. So like all the answers they rhyme, but it's not internally coherent because of the mental work that we've done. Right? So, an argument can be made that casino provides an evening, and that's good. Phone gambling is somewhat new. Yeah, all right, so casinos are weird, right? So I've been to Vegas a few times, and sometimes I make money, sometimes I lose money. Sometimes I feel good, sometimes I don't feel good. I don't, but like they have to do a lot to dress it up. They have to do a lot to class it up. So it's like an evening and an event in itself, and not just, a desperation. It only works if you don't need the money. If you actually need the money, then it's kind of a degenerate place. Yeah. So, I don't know. I haven't been in decades now, or at least a decade. I had to lay up, stuck in Vegas for a trip about 10 years ago, but there was a layover that we got, weather happened and we couldn't fly out. But other than that, like, I don't know. Vegas had to do a lot of work to class it up. So it's an evening. So it's an event and not just a degraded spectacle where you make money up based on chance without being productive. All right. All right, so yes, blah, blah says it's worked out, but it's internalized via the idea of the curse of Ham, and that's the internal coherence you speak of. Do black people really, the only time I hear about the curse of Ham is from like racist whites. I don't really think about black people taking on the curse of Ham as their own identity. So in order to have an internally coherent identity, you would need autonomous institutions of cultural formation. And I'm not convinced we have autonomous institutions of cultural formation. I don't think black people control the black mind. I don't think black people control the black mind. I think people who might not have the best interests of black people control the black mind. And that's just because in order, like, if you don't have any cultural information, especially if you don't have any families, networked families, and then networked families of all classes, then you're going to be vulnerable to the people who can control, who can afford the media out of which you live, right? So thank you for your time. I hope this has been enlightening, that you understand the difference between a culture of risks that we need. And remember, I'm the guy who might be against the I'm a guy who might be against what might be I might be against. I just got hit with a more interesting question in chat. Can you give an example of what you mean by a productive risk in society women should be taking but are not? Well, okay, so there's a reason why like our labor politics has been crap since feminism took over. And Erica Hunt, you might not believe me when I say this, but our labor politics has been crap for the last 40 years. And it's because we're expecting too much organized labor work to be done, organizing risk to be taken on by women in the workforce who are just not built for that kind of risk, who aren't enculturated to that kind of risk. So it's killed the whole labor movement, depending on women to take on that kind of risk. We're depending on an entire gender that really wasn't socialized to ask out a date, to like take it to organized labor, norma ray withstanding. We have an unreconstructed womanhood that isn't fit to lead a labor movement. So we have no labor movement. COVID was a great example of like women in their masks screwing up, the freedom of society and screwing up, like closing schools and doing all sorts of bad things for their safetyism. Safetyism is a gendered phenomenon. Safetyism is a gendered phenomenon, and it's not particularly good for our politics. So yeah, like women control public education, and we closed all of our schools because, they didn't want to take the risk for the kids, and it was bad for the kids, right? So, all right. So someone says, you are a definition from an example of the show. I present that to black folks so that they can consider what you're talking about when they talk about black folks working together like organized youth. We can't work together, right? So yes, blah, blah, blah says like we can just work together like the Jews. No, we don't have the institutional control, the discretionary income to build the institution to work together like the Jews. Anytime we join in coalitions with people, we end up working for people because those other people can easily buy us because we're vulnerable. We're vulnerable, right? All right. So Erica Hunt says, yeah, COVID is a very good example. I understand what you mean. Yeah. I mean, we have a gender division of risk in society. And it's not really clear that there are stakes to it, but it's why like progressive movements are muscularly led by men, and when women lead them, they're pretty narrowly focused for like them. And if it, and if it doesn't work for them, it's not going to be for everybody. It's not going to be some big social movement. They won't lead it. They won't do it, right? So I want to actually, and I have daughters and I have a lot at stake here, but I want to actually distort the gender division of risk and have women get used to risking as on a par with their male counterparts. I think it'd be good for the left because right now we're run by women who don't know how risk averse they are. And then it ends up screwing up like all of the things. Right. So just the idea that with a prediction market, you should be able to bet on every difference of opinion, whether Danny Glover is going to die in 2016, whether Kamala Harris is ever going to adopt a baby, whether Nick Fuentes is gay. You should be able to, will ever come out as gay. The Kalshi wants to set up a prediction market for all of that, for all of that. The gender of Saga and Chetty's next kid. They wanted to set up a production market for all of that. I'm just saying that all of these things shouldn't be fodder for making money, because not all of these things actually like lead toward a productive good in society. Good. Yeah. Okay. So at least Erica Hunt, I'm glad you're not knee-jerking, like just fighting me on this. Yes, women are excellent about scaring everyone else too. They are a conservative part. They're the wet blanket spouse metaphor in like movies. That's a thing for a reason, but it's a cultural. There may be evolutionary reasons, whatever for it, but it's also it's culturally habituated because it's not universal. Like women across the world don't suck like American women do, which is one of the reasons why women across the world can come here, and like families across the world can come here and like rule, because the women aren't as like scared of everything as our women are. Right? Irony, what are your opinions of Cory Booker getting married? They say she's his beard and that he might run for president. Who cares if Cory Booker is an irrelevant Negro? He is irrelevant. Cory Booker is irrelevant. I don't care. Let him run for president. Sure. You want to run for president, you get to run for president. But Cory Booker is irrelevant. He's 8 times irrelevant because he's bought and sold by AIPAC. Like, I don't understand. Like, look, man, if you're Cory Booker, you don't even have kids. Like, why do you need that AIPAC money? Like, what do you need money for, man? Like, why can't you be free? Like, I'm a free Negro and I have kids to feed. By the way, if you appreciate what I do, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, $50 a month, because this is how I feed my family, keep the lights on, and I want to give you a quality of wisdom that you're not going to get everywhere else. Yeah, I'm going to give you a quality of wisdom that you're not going to get everywhere else, but you need to support it on the house. And then clip it up and share it with your friends. That would help me quite a bit. And yeah, thank you for your time. There's nothing in chat. I'm gonna keep moving on. Irony, where are you? Okay, so I want an example because I agree with you. Erica Hunt says, I wanted the example because I agree with you about your criticism of American women, and you have no idea. They're ruining everything, and they have been for quite some time. See, Erica Hunt, you agree with me. And I think, since I'm not like a misogynist, I actually like women. I actually like women. I'm not the hugest fan of womanhood, like as a culture, as an American culture, but I see it as a historically emergent American culture that emerged for certain reasons, not racially benign ones, but like, it emerged at like for certain reasons. So like women get it, and women who are actually serious about like doing things and have to work with other women get it too, because then they find themselves accommodating themselves like to a twit. But like, I'm trying to do something important, but I have to accommodate myself to a twit. But like, why does society expect me to accommodate myself to a twit? Well, because we're not in the business of like detwittifying women. And so now you have to deal with them. So now there's like a layer of women who have to deal with other women who get frustrated with like the ordeal of dealing with other women. And there's no small number of women who want like a male boss if they have to deal with an employer. So Erica, you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not crazy. We don't make the best women in the United States. But we could do better. And it's not biologically determined. It's cultural. It's cultural. I was going to do a tomorrow's show. I might do a show. I might have to think about this a little bit. Think with me, people. I'm going to do a show about how rights talk doesn't really work with gender in America, because even when you're talking about the right of way, you're talking about the world accommodating you. You're talking about a claim that the world should accommodate you in a certain way. Like I said, a 4-way stop, if I have the right of way, I think the other people should accommodate me a certain way because, of the rules of antecedent institutions that have been established. I should be accommodated because I'm on the right, or I got there first, or whatever. And so all rights entail someone else's accommodation. And if they don't accommodate you the way they're supposed to, they've committed a wrong. So all rights allow for the possibility of someone else committing a wrong. All right. And so whether we're talking about the right of way or we're talking about free speech or whatever, the all rights call for accommodation. And if someone doesn't accommodate you, then they have committed a wrong. Now, why is it that we have a hard time leading rights campaigns with women on the helm? Like labor rights and like, I think people should have a right to a job. And like we need to talk about rights in terms of rights. And I think it's because women get accommodations without having to demand them by right. And this is going to, like, people are going to complain about this, but I really do think that women are used to being nice, other people being nice to them and accommodating them without having to demand it by right, and especially not demanding it by right because it's not universal, right? They want, like, women are used to people treating them nice because people want to treat them nice as an individual because they don't want to sleep with women in general. They want to sleep with you, right? So they're used to people. They don't want to be nice to women in general. They want to be nice to you because they like being nice to you as an individual, right? So since they're not used to having to demand by right, like in a competitive world, like it undermines their respect for rights, and this is why we haven't had like new rights being articulated in the same way. So I do think that we need to talk about all of the ways in which, like, society is asymmetrically nice to women at the individual level, because it screws up the whole gender politics. And we need to admit to that. Like, people, like, we're just nice. We're just nicer to women, like individual women. Like, we're just nicer to individual women than we are to nice individual men. We open doors for them. And so you don't have to demand, you don't need rights in the same way when people are nice to you, since it's all about fundamentally getting the world to accommodate you. The only reason we have a rights discourse is because we need some way to clarify, like, how the world's going to accommodate you. If people are going to accommodate you because they just like you, that's both different and not that different from people accommodating you by right. Either way, they're letting you go first. You're getting the right of way, right? So I'm going to work this out a little bit. I'll probably come out with a show on it tomorrow. But look, man, talking like this, I lose a lot. I lose a lot of donors that are simps, and I lose a lot of donors who are women who are like saying, no, we have it so hard. So I need you to go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. And so I can do that show and still feed my family. So, yeah. But mostly I just want you to get from this show that there's a difference between the risk for productive contributions to civil society versus gambling on the operations of civil society without contributing to them, and how the latter creates people who actually disdain civil society. All right. Yeah. All right. So I think women get a lot of mixed messages, but like the mixed messages aren't just messages, they're actually mixed realities. So Black Hat Forger Jr. says women are taught that they're princesses from the time they're little girls based upon Disney fairy tale Cinderella and the line that beauty can open up doors better than intelligence can. Well, okay, so my girls aren't taught that. And I think this is like a uniquely American thing, and in certain classes of Americans, like other girls aren't taught to be useless in the same way that American girls are taught to be useless. I like it. That's just like empirically false. But American girls are taught to be useless, and I had to realize, and I've said this on other shows, I had to realize that a lot of the junk that got into, especially my oldest daughter, came through other women teaching her how to be women. Like I was worried about like some race stuff, but like it was actually the worst stuff came from older women teaching my daughter how to be a girl. Once I realized that, it was a little bit too late, so I've had to do some remediation. But like that was eye-opening. I was like, oh, the crap comes in through gender. The crap comes in through gender. I wasn't really playing defense around it, so now I'm very cautious about what women spend time around my daughters. I trust them more around men than I do around women. Because women just teach my daughters how to manipulate people and that they don't have to actually like do hard things. And so I send my daughter to the AutoZone or something like that for her first job. I'm not sending her to, Fashion Week. All right, so, all right. Blackout 300 says, doesn't matter. You will not be the only one influencing them. Yeah. But it doesn't matter as long as, but I'll be the primary influence. I can be the primary influence. People think that you just kind of send your kids out and the world raises them. And no, I raise my kids. I am the primary influence of my kids. And when I don't like the other people who are influencing them, I cut them off. There are no like random iPads and my kids don't have phones. And so what they know about the world, a lot of it they get from me. And they get it at such a deep level that like it kind of undermines what they might get from other people. So yeah, I very much influence my kids. I control what they get, not the algorithm. Sorry, Blackout 300. Like, look, we were raised by boomers, or at least I was raised by boomers who didn't really do that good of a job. I saw other people. I saw other parents control their kids better, but I was raised in kind of a laissez-faire latchkey system where like, but that's not how my kids are raised. My kids are raised by me, in a different way. By the way, since I'm just vamping as I read an essay today about Olympic swimmers, and the interesting thing about Olympic swimmers is they don't swim that much more than like non-Olympic swimmers. So it's not about how hard you train. It's qualitatively. It's about qualitative, not quantity. So it's not like more time in the pool. It's that they're actually doing different things and having different techniques, and how that what that means for excellence in other aspects of life. And I really do think that, in a way, my family time, any results I get that might be better than other people, it's not necessarily because I spend more time with my kids, but it's that I spend better time with my kids, like doing, and I spend more time, but I'm better at it because, there are a lot of homeschool parents who raise bad kids and they don't really know why. And so there are ways you can spend time all the time in the world with your kids, and it's just not really particularly contentful. So you end up with screwed up kids. So it's not just time. Quality matters. It's not quantity. It's quality. Quality. And it's the same with I suspect most sports. It's not necessarily the person who practices all the time as much as it's the person who runs the right drills and in the right way. Heck, the person who practices all the time might get overuse injuries. Just saying. Turns out quantity matters. I think I'm going to do a different show on that article because it was a good article. Because he's like, look, you would think that the highest level swimmers swim more than the lowest level swimmers. No, they swim about the same. They just have a better community and attention to detail and better coaching. And I think studying is the truth there. I'm not the perfect studier. I didn't grow up. In some ways, I'm kind of jealous of some of the Orthodox Jews I went to school with, who really know how to break down a text argument to argument because that's just what they grew up doing as a family practice every Shabbos. For me, it's a little bit more of an arduous process, but my kids, they break it down with me. So they grew up in the kind of household that I didn't. But yeah, quality matters. Quality matters. Quality matters. All right, so Black Hater Jr. Hate for Jr. says, would you want your kids to grow up to be politicians or captains of industry? I mean, sure. Right now, the backup profession is law professor. I just feel like I'll train them so that they could either go start a business or be a law professor. I definitely want them to be a little bit better than I am at a lot of things. So I feel like law professor is a good backup. But for my oldest, I'm thinking about her going into the military for a while. We're doing CAP now, the Civil Air Patrol, and it seems to kind of really like work with her. And I appreciate the structure. And I'm not anti-military. People assume I'm anti-military. I think the military is fine, especially if you're black and like, you know. So for my oldest daughter, maybe the military for a while. But for everybody, and then she becomes a law professor. Who knows? But for the other ones, I think the backup is law professor, and then whatever they want to do, that's not that. That's great. I can't set them up for everything. I can't set them up to be a tech guru. I with a good conscience. I just don't have that kind of background. And I know the people who do have that kind of background are gonna like eat their lunch. I don't know. I think I can keep up. I think by the time my kids get into high school, they will be as good at math as like the kids I went to Berkeley with, who ended up going into Silicon Valley. But there are so many things I just don't know that are like generational skills that I don't really trust anybody else teaching, but I don't know. So like I just don't know if it's going to work out. But what I'm pretty sure I can do is create law professors, even though, you know, I'm not one, but I think I can do that. Okay, well, thank you for your time. And I will talk to you at another time, probably tomorrow, on gender and rights, and how if rights are about accommodation, which they are, we need to talk about how like the structural ways in which women are accommodated without right, which makes them kind of bad allies in rights talk. And Erica Hunt, maybe you'll have something to say about that. Maybe you like organizing on the left with women in politics. I just think it's less reliable in some ways. All right. Thank you for your time. Peace.